What's up, everybody? It's Hank here with Smoke Break Podcast, and today is a very special episode for me because normally I'm an MMA podcast. You know, I only talk about MMA, but I'm also pretty knowledgeable on wrestling. I don't keep up with it as much. I mean, I still watch pay per views here and there, buy DVDs here and there, but from the time I was born till about ninth grade, I was a diehard fan, watched it every week Raw, SmackDown, old TNA, all that stuff and still keep up with it a little bit, but know a lot. My guest today is a Funkmaster Wrestling podcast, and we're gonna talk a little bit about wrestling. Say what's up.
What's up, guys?
Yeah, if you guys want to find him, what's your Twitter? If they want to look you up and find you.
Well, you can follow Funk Masters of Wrestling podcast at FMOW_podcast. I'm AT. You could also follow me at Adam Tigerbomb on Twitter.
Hell yeah, man. So I'll just start with this. When did you become a wrestling fan?
Ooh, I love this question.
Yeah.
I might go into a little bit of a rant here. I'm going to warn you.
You're good.
All right, cool. All right, so everyone knows, I mean, we're in a heyday of wrestling right now, as it is. It's been reinvented, but everyone knows, the 90s was a huge boom period for wrestling. You had the start of the Attitude Era in the late 90s, and that's when it all began for me. Like, going to school as a kid, by the time I was around, 8 or 9, I guess I could say, going to school, you begin to see everybody with Stone Cold Steve Austin t-shirts, Rock t-shirts, WWF Attitude shirts, so you're becoming very aware of what the product is, and without even watching wrestling, you're finding out who people like The Rock, Stone Cold, Mick Foley, Undertaker, larger than life living legends. You're beginning to understand who these people are without even have watched the product, they were everywhere, plastered in magazine ads and stuff like that. So one day, now I didn't have the luxury as a kid growing up. I didn't have cable, right? So everyone knows if you watched WCW at the time or Monday Night Raw, Raw's War, it was always that was all on cable. So I had no means to watch that at all, So one day, they were getting ready to launch the first SmackDown ever, the first WWF SmackDown episode. And it had been announced that they were going to air it on UPN, Channel 9 in my area, which, that's a non-cable channel. So my older brother at the time had caught wind of this. So he's like, dude, it's going to be on TV and we're going to be able to watch it. Do you want to watch it? So now that I know who some of these faces are, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So that night, me, my two brothers, we sat down, watched the first episode of SmackDown. That was it, man. Hooked from the start. So much happened in that one episode, and I remember most of that night off the back of my hand, to be honest, dude. That was it. I've been a fan ever since.
Very, very, very similar story. My wrestling was around my entire life. From the time I was first born, I remember coming home literally as little kid. I mean, 5 years old, and watching nothing but wrestling. I had the trampoline outside, and me and my brother and sisters.
Oh boy!
would wrestle. Some of my youngest memories and best memories as a kid was watching wrestling and wrestling on the trampoline.
Yeah, man. And speaking of stuff like that, going out to the trampoline, we wanted to be wrestlers so badly at that point, my brothers and I. That was one of the when you're a kid, you dream of doing very, very big things, right? So for me as a kid, I wanted to do one of two things. One was either be a rock star. Two was to be a wrestler. Those were my priorities. But so by the time I was about 13, I'm just going to go forward here a little bit. We'll backtrack after this story, but we were very impressionable, and especially as a teenager, you become very impressionable, and you think, we didn't have a trampoline, but we managed to, me, my brothers, and friends who were willing enough, we'd put on shows for our friends, and we, got into the realm of backyard wrestling, and we did some pretty stupid things. I wouldn't condone it now, but that's how diehard we were at the time, man. We were willing to do absolutely like anything to just make us feel like we were in that world. And that's as far as we went.
Yeah, same here. I wanted to be, same exact thing. I wanted to be a professional wrestler, one. And if that didn't work, I really loved commentating wrestling, Back when I was young,
course.
I used to do it in my head, and then I would think to myself, well, why am I just doing it in my head? And I started doing it out loud, and actually would be, pretty good at it. It's not extremely hard, but it's, it definitely takes some skill, keeping notes.
Definitely,
and all that stuff.
absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely an art, and it's definitely an important component to the whole product. So.
Oh yeah, you got to have the energy and the emotion. Mauro Ranal's perfect example.
He's the best. My favorite at the moment.
Commentator. I grew up on Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, so to me,
right.
Those, that's the legends, the classics. But I love like Mike Tenay and Don West and TNA. That was a good duo.
Yeah, for sure. And right now on Impact Wrestling, you have Don Callis and Josh Matthews, and they're just wonderful on that day when Josh. What's up?
Was you a fan way back when Josh Matthews hosted Velocity? Do you remember Velocity?
I remember Velocity. I didn't watch it a lot, but back during that time when he was doing a lot of the backstage segment, it's not that I didn't like him. I just wasn't too big on him. But once I started watching TNA when it was redone as Impact Wrestling after they dealt with all their financial issues that they were having, I kind of sat down and really listened to him. This guy is actually pretty damn good after all this time. So I definitely appreciate what he brings to the table now.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I haven't watched much TNA wrestling since it changed from TNA to the Global Impact, I believe it is. And then,
yeah, it was a weird twist of events to how it got to what it is now.
But I have tuned in, and that one Pentagon Jr. is amazing. And
love Pentagon Jr. I love Pentagon Jr.
I'm trying to think. Matt Sydal. Yeah.
Matt Sydal. Yeah, Matt Sydal's great. Absolutely.
I'm a huge fan of his. He is a great in-ring talent.
Absolutely. The guy's a beast, and I like what they're doing with him right now in Impact. But Pentagon Jr., man, let me tell you, I've stated this before on my podcast on a couple of episodes of the Funk Masters of Wrestling. But Pentagon Jr., he did a lot of stuff in Lucha Underground. I don't know if you're familiar with that product, but that's a really good product. It's very different. Matt Striker and Vampiro on commentary. That's great. But when I first saw Pentagon Jr., well, first off, I liked that the whole company revolved around Lucha, even though not everybody is a traditional luchador wrestler, but it definitely made it hot again, especially, I think, in the States. So, he did that. He did AAA worldwide down in Mexico. He's a star there. But, when Pentagon became Impact World Champion, I think that set a new standard, and I think it definitely set the bar higher for, Lucha fandom in the United States. You have him, you have his brother Ray Phoenix, who's definitely a hot commodity in Impact. And I think, now this isn't to hate on WWE. I love WWE. But, at the time when WWE had Rey Mysterio, I think that was the only, lucha-style wrestler that they pulled the trigger right on, basically, that everybody loved in the mainstream. Other luchadors that had come into the company, I don't think got the same treatment. Why that is, I really can't say. I'm not an expert. I'm just a fan, basically. But for some reason, with the way they've executed everything for Pentagon Jr. and Ray Phoenix on Impact, everybody loves those two now. They're fan favorites, and it's just so cool to see luchadors in that light here in the U.S. now.
Yeah, Pentagon, the first thing that sticks out at you is his look. The creepy mask.
Oh, yeah,
the painted face. He's got a great look. Does he speak English sometimes, or is he always doing Spanish?
In my time watching Pentagon Jr.,
I've only seen Spanish so far.
Yeah, same here. I was listening to, I think it was an interview with, I was listening to Stone Cold's podcast, and he said he had met Pentagon Jr., and He said it was a very nice interaction with the guy, but I think Austin said as well he didn't speak English that much. But I mean, that's saying something, though, to the fact that there's a language barrier, but you're still managing to have such great chemistry with your opponents in the ring. That just goes to show you how great of a worker he really is.
Yeah, I've said kind of the same thing, vice versa in MMA. MMA, if you can't speak English, you can be the most badass fighter in the world, but that English barrier is hard. Not to say you can't overpass it, but it's hard when you interview somebody after a fight or after a wrestling match or something. You don't want to have to go through a translator. Fans don't want to have to listen to a translator sometimes. It just seems to help your stardom and fan base easier for the English-speaking population if you speak English too.
Right. And going into that, I think it's kind of an issue WWE is facing right now with the likes of, you have stars that came from Japan like Shinsuke Nakamura and Asuka, who was known as Kana over in Japan at the time. I wasn't aware of who these two really were until they stepped into WWE's developmental brand for NXT, which is on their network, which is a phenomenal product as well. These two were stars as well in NXT, but the problem was there was a language. Can they speak English to a degree? But a lot of people can make the argument, though, that it's one of the reasons. Shinsuke Nakamura was an NXT heavyweight champion. Asuka was NXT women's champion. But the thing was, though, that process is run a bit differently than the main brand. When they brought up to the main brand, where you thought they would excel at everything and instantly be put to the top, it seemed like they were being held back. Like management and the writers didn't really know what to do with them because someone else is running that show. And that's Vince, while Triple H is running the whole NXT show. Triple H knows a good wrestler. Triple H knows a star because he was in that position. But because they couldn't speak English, I guess it held them back to a degree because WWE has a large reach to so many different programs in the world. And to have someone go on another show, you want the communication to be clear. So I guess that's never put, the main brand heavyweight championship on Shinsuke Nakamura or the main women's championship on Asuka, because I guess in a sense they felt like they couldn't be represented that way, which is a shame because these two were just so talented.
Yeah, it's funny. I got two quick things on that. I want to, before we get into Shinsuke, which I want to for sure. Is Asuka trans? I seen that in a report, and
I've never heard about that. This is the first time I'm hearing about this now.
I swear to God, I looked it up. I had no idea. There is an article on Google. Asuka is trans, according to the internet.
I mean, if she is, that's her personal life.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or anything. I'm just saying the shock factor of having no clue about it. And then one time I seen it on Twitter and I looked it up, and sure enough, when you Google it, it says that Asuka is a trans wrestler. I'm not hating her. I'm not saying nothing bad. Just the pure fact of I don't think many people know.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's something I'd have to read about then to see, and I'll.
Plus, you know how bullshit articles are too. It could have been
right.
nonsense.
Yeah, you never know. Right. It's definitely something to think about. But if it is true, that's fine. I'm still a fan. She's so good.
Oh,
she's such
dope.
a great worker.
She's dope as hell. Her mask, her get up, the entrance. It completely blindsided me because you like some you can tell, you can look and tell. With her, it completely blew my mind. Which, like I said, it could all be fake. But jumping into Shinsuke,
right.
I dropped off a little bit, as far as being a fan. I still buy the best of 2016 pay-per-views, best of 2015 pay-per-views, DVDs, and all that stuff. But the reason that I bought WWE 2K19 was somebody sent me an article on Twitter about Shinsuke, about his entrance, and I looked it up, and apart from The Undertaker's entrance and maybe Triple H's entrance, the old school Triple H where he had long hair.
Right.
It's a great entrance. I think one of the all-time greats.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. I remember when I first saw Shinsuke Nakamura, it's funny because when I first started watching wrestling, I was exposed to a bit of Japanese wrestling in the 90s, and it's a completely different product from what you see over here in the US. And the Japanese culture, which I love, it's very different, and a lot of it's based on, polite mannerisms and stuff like that. So the crowd is very different, but very receptive at the same time. But a lot of these guys, with the way they compose themselves, is very different as watching someone from WWE or maybe WCW and ECW back in the day. But when I see Shinsuke Nakamura come out for the first time with his antics, I think I was watching it with my brother one night, and his exact words were, "I've never seen a Japanese person with so much swag before."
Yeah, he is so
best way you can put it. Yeah, he's got a lot of charisma, and I think that was one thing that definitely helped him transition so well over here in the U.S. with that language barrier.
Yeah.
So he definitely had that working for him. And what's so cool about Shinsuke, because like you said, you're an MMA guy. Shinsuke's got an MMA background.
Wears a mouth guard like an MMA fighter.
Yeah. Right. And it comes with that strong style, Japanese wrestlers are primarily trained in MMA for a good portion of their wrestling training as well. That's why they call it strong style, because it's wrestling, but a lot of it has to do with strikes as well, which Shinsuke obviously showcased in his wrestling style. Asuka as well, so it's definitely cool to see.
Yeah, if you'll look at like Japanese wrestling, it almost looks like they are fighting. They almost throw more kicks, like real Muay Thai style kicks, real looking punches. I mean, I'm not saying WWE makes them look fake, but Japanese seems to have a more straight up fighting feel to it.
It's like it almost feels like you're absorbing every shot while you're watching it, to be honest. It's that impactful. Yeah, it's great. I think a lot of people felt that way. And you have British strong style too, which to a degree tries to emulate that in a sense. But there's different components, again, different countries, different cultures. Everyone's going to put their own spin on it, though. But if you ever want to see something really wild, actually, and I don't think a lot of people have realized this, which is fine, because in wrestling, there's always something to learn. There's so much stuff out there. It's hard to keep track of everything. But if you go on YouTube, you could find matches with Shinsuke Nakamura in Japan wrestling Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, like between 2006, 2008. And I had known at the time Brock Lesnar had gone to Japan, especially like during those years. But I still didn't know who Shinsuke Nakamura was and stuff like that. So to find out all that all of these people are like interconnected, it's such a fun aspect of wrestling. It's another reason why I just love seeing how everyone's connected.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said about Shinsuke, the thing that sticks out automatically is his entrance, but the look of him, his crazy antics, the mouth guard. I've seen a couple of interviews. I actually tuned into SmackDown for the first time in years the other day, and as soon as I clicked it on, it was Jeff Hardy and Shinsuke. And Shinsuke...
Yeah, they had a good match.
Oh, yeah, and Shinsuke is just one of those guys that sucks you in and makes you want to watch him. I showed him to my wife, and she's not even a really big wrestling person, and immediately got right into it. It's a lot. I think the number one thing a wrestler needs, besides great moveset, besides being a good talker, besides all that stuff, is that shock and wow factor. Like when people look at you, they just want to be like, they want to be interested in you. You want to be
right.
You want to be interesting while doing nothing. When Undertaker makes that walk, he's not saying a word, and people are just holding their breath. I believe Shinsuke's got that same factor of, this is just a very unique guy.
What's so great about Shinsuke now is, too, when he got brought up to the main roster, we were seeing a very, I think, interesting transition for him. And when he got involved in the main title picture with AJ Styles, which is interesting to see because, again, these two have had history in Japan as well for the IWGP Championship in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It was kind of like a very watered-down angle. And I was very disappointed with it because I thought Shinsuke deserved so much better. So at this year's WrestleMania, which was 34, I believe. They have this match, and it was a good match. But because of the watered-down story, I was kind of just like, well, all right, I guess this is what it is. And then they do the heel turn at the end with Shinsuke. And I was kind of just like, oh, my God, this might have just been so worth it right now. And which he's still running that heel angle with his character right now. And he's got much better at his English speaking as well. But for a while when he first turned heel, people would try to interview him, and he would just run around saying that he does not speak English. And I'm just like, that is perfect utilization right there to use this guy. And he's just, you know, he's got this certain kind of arrogance with that entrance. And being the character that he is now, everything has just come together so well. And I think... I don't know. It's just everything's just gotten better and better for him from the start, to be honest. But one thing I'm most confused about right now is, like, they're having the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view this Sunday. He's the United States champion, and he doesn't have a match. So I'm kind of just like...
That's weird.
It's weird. It's exactly. Like, they've been building up this... He had this match with... Jeff Hardy and Shinsuke had this match on SmackDown.
Good match. I watched it.
Very good match. But meanwhile, Randy Orton is involved with this whole angle as well. But it's going to be Jeff Hardy versus Randy Orton in a Hell in a Cell match. But I'm just thinking to myself, why don't you just make it a triple threat match inside the Hell in a Cell for the United States Championship? Either way, we're still going to get a good match out of this. I just can't figure out for the life of me why you took Shinsuke out of the equation. It's not right. I don't understand.
I could be wrong here, but haven't they already put the main belt on him? Didn't they already make him win? I remember when he was first beefing with AJ Styles, and I believe AJ beat him a time or two, but I'm pretty sure that he's been WWE champion at least once, right? Or am I wrong?
No, not once. He
They've
was
never put the belt on him?
Never. He was when he came over, they first put him in NXT, and he was champion in NXT actually. So after that, he transitioned up to the main roster and, you know, has had the title elude him on several occasions. But eventually, in the long run, they made him U.S. champion.
I cannot believe that they have not put the main belt on him yet.
Yeah, you know what? It was like a series of like 4 pay-per-view matches consecutively.
I remember it.
After WrestleMania. And each match was getting better and better. And you really thought finally at the last one, this was going to be it. Like, Shinsuke is finally going to get the title. But no. Some of these matches were ending in like the weirdest of circumstances. And again, like, I'm not an expert, so I would really like to know or get an inside source to like, what is really going on over there that you did not want to make this guy
He's one of the guys
WWE champion?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Maybe somewhere down the line. It's really tough to tell because right now, as far as the WWE title picture goes, I see it going a certain way, but it's going to be a process of months for this outcome to happen. Basically, I still think it will be a while for Shinsuke Nakamura to be WWE champion, and we're probably going to have to like wait another year. I hate to say it that way, but it's true because I think eventually they're going to be grooming Daniel Bryan to be WWE champ. Process, you're going to have drop the belt. Some people might disagree with me on this because I do believe as far as the SmackDown brand goes, they want AJ Styles to be the guy.
I was going to say, AJ's in a very weird position, or not AJ, Shinsuke is in a very weird position with AJ because AJ's kind of like the big thing right now and everybody's getting behind him and everybody loves him. And he's such a phenomenal wrestler. I mean, he is the phenomenal one. AJ's been that way since way back in the TNA days. He has always been a star in the making. But I think with Shinsuke and AJ, I believe if I had them both, I'd push Shinsuke more because AJ, you can always do that back and forth thing like you're talking about. Let AJ win 2 in a row. Let Shinsuke win 1. Let AJ get it back, and then 6 months later, I think they're too hesitant to toss the belt around a lot. I see a lot of long reigning champions now. But
Right. Shinsuke
is one of those guys that it would be a tough call, but I would push him a little bit more than AJ, just a little bit more.
For sure. I think we'd be in a position now because AJ's had the title for almost a year now. which I haven't seen a long reign like that in a while. I'm not counting Brock Lesnar's current reign when he was Raw's Universal Heavyweight Champion. That was just...
He has one match a year.
that was done out of spite. That was totally Vince McMahon being pissed off about the whole CM Punk situation, which was years like past beyond that. And just CM Punk had the longest reigning championship reign for like 400 something plus days.
Long time. I remember that.
He didn't want it to be CM Punk anymore. So what do? You sign this odd deal with Brock Lesnar. You slap the title on him. You diminish the main title's value by not having it be around anymore. And it was kind of just like, by the time Roman Reigns finally won it, I was kind of just like, I'm just glad this whole thing's over. You know, I think it was going to come down to that, but it was just so spiteful, and it didn't need to happen. Again, I love WWE, but nothing is perfect. You know, like everything has its problems. You know, there's so many wrestling products I love, but none of them are perfect. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. There's so much good stuff happening right now that I think it's all good. But Vince, I don't know. Vince is kind of out of touch, I feel. He's like, his mentality is like a 12-year-old, I feel like.
It's changed a lot over the years. That leads me to something that I definitely want to talk about, and you set me up perfect by mentioning Brock Lesnar. In my opinion, the worst mistake in WWE history was not having The Undertaker retire undefeated at WrestleMania. There is nothing that is guaranteed in WWE. They surprise you everywhere they can, especially hardcore educated fans, because we like to guess what we like to guess. You know, I can sit down right now on Monday, this coming up Monday, and watch the show, and I guarantee you on at least a couple of matches and a couple of segments, I can guess which route they're going to go. You know what I mean? And with The Undertaker, I believe that was your one set in stone thing. WrestleMania. Undertaker's going to win at WrestleMania. If there's one thing that's going to happen, Undertaker's going to win at WrestleMania. And I think having Brock Lesnar beat him, and I think, he even lost to Roman Reigns after that. And I'm going to talk about Roman Reigns at the end of the show. That'll be our last topic. But
sure.
What's your opinion of Brock Lesnar beating The Undertaker? And do you agree with me by saying that that's the biggest mistake WWE has ever made? Or at least one of them. If not the biggest, at least one of the biggest.
It's weird. Like, I think when the streak first ended, I was really against that, because I felt like, well, he's not. It was very clear that he hadn't called for retirement or anything like that. So I'm thinking to myself, well, if he comes back and wins another match at WrestleMania, what does it really mean at this point when the streak is broken? You know, if anyone listening could give me their own insight, that's great. But for me personally, I was kind of just like, well, what the hell is this? But now part of me is like, I don't mind that the streak ended, but if you were going to end it, maybe it should have been the last match flat out, period. But here we are about 2 years later now, where apparently Undertaker was said to be actually retired, but he's still coming back and having matches now. So the whole thing, again, it's it's watered down at this point. I don't know what to expect. I mean, I do expect to see a good match at the Super Show that they're going to be doing down in Australia with Triple H and The Undertaker. And I think it's, some people might call it a nostalgia act, but I mean, hey, I grew up watching these two guys, and to see them throw down on this event that they really seem to be pushing for Australia, I mean, I'm game for it. But at this point, if you were, again, going back to the streak, if you were going to end it, one, I think it should have been the last match for sure. Two, it just should have been someone else other than Brock Lesnar. I don't like the fact that, without getting too ahead of myself here, it's just, some people could say I'm being sour. That's fine. This is my opinion. This is not factual or anything. This is just what I think. Brock, you let the guy come back where he doesn't show up all the time, diminishes the value, again, of the Universal Heavyweight Championship. to the point where no one began to care about it at a point. And so why wasn't it someone else that worked so much harder from the ground up, that is around all the time on the product? Why wasn't it someone like that? I wouldn't have minded if it was Roman Reigns to actually officially end the streak. I would have been totally okay with that. I'm a Roman Reigns fan. I like the guy. I'm happy that he's champion right now.
Ooh.
But again, some people might disagree with me on that, but I don't see what's so bad about the guy. Everyone makes the argument, oh, he can't wrestle. Well, what do you mean he can't wrestle? You're upset that he only does like a few like key moves? I mean, sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes less is more. Roman delivers and sells on absolutely everything he does, and he shows up every time. It's just, people have made the argument to me with the whole Brock Lesnar situation, like, oh my God, but he's got the contract that everyone would kill to have right now. I think that's debatable. I think it depends on what mindset you're coming from. Brock Lesnar has, I forget what disease he has, but it's what,
diverticulitis.
It is diverticulitis. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was it or not. So it's like, one, you got that. Two, you have this whole UFC deal. But it's just like, okay, sure. Yeah, he gets to spend time with his family. It's like, okay, I get that. But there are probably other guys on the road that have worked even harder that probably don't have to be home to watch over a family or something like that. Like this product is their life. You know what I mean? So I just think it depends on what aspect you look at it. Sure, there probably are some guys that would have taken that kind of a contract in a heartbeat. But if you were that guy, I don't think then you're the one that should be the face of the company and be holding the belt at that point. It should be someone that is going to be there all the time and knows that they can be there all the time.
Yeah.
That's just me, though.
I remember when Brock Lesnar first come to WWE, and I'm sure you do too. He debuted on SmackDown, destroyed that guy with the one leg, threw him up against the steel post, destroyed him, and had that whole beef with Goldberg a little bit. And the whole thing with Kurt Angle where he did the backflip off the top.
Oh, yeah, the shooting star press. Yeah, when he broke his neck on that. I remember that.
My thing with Brock is, you know me, I'm an MMA fan. I'm a diehard MMA fan. And Brock, when he first came in the UFC, he shocked a lot of people.
Absolutely.
He defeated Frank Mir. He defeated Randy Couture. And I don't know if you know much about MMA, but those are legends. Those are guys who have beat and fought some of the best mixed martial artists in the world. And Brock beat him. Brock had wins against Shane Carwin. He's beat some good guys. But it all kind of started going downhill with Alistair Overeem. And Alistair Overeem did test positive for steroids after the fight. But Overeem went right out there, destroyed him, and beat him in like 2 minutes. Within 2 minutes, it was over. Brock had been destroyed. And it really hurt him. I think you need Brock to come in WWE as that destroyer. You know, that the beast. That's why they call him the beast. If he goes in this real life MMA and he fought and lost against Cain Velasquez and lost his belt, and then he went away for a long time after the Overeem loss, and come back at UFC 200 and fought Mark Hunt, test positive for steroids in that fight, and he hasn't been back since. And I'm sure you've seen this whole stuff with DC in the cage at the UFC where DC knocked out Stipe for the heavyweight championship. And Brock Lesnar is just one of those guys, I think, that if he goes to MMA and falls flat on his face, it hurts him in the WWE. And I mean, I'm not a super big, huge nowadays WWE fan, but do you see what I'm saying a little bit?
Right, of course. I hear you.
If you have Brock go over there and he loses 5 fist fights in a row, it's kind of hard to promote him as the unstoppable beast.
Right, for sure, because I think it doesn't even just like hurt him as, you know, like his character as far as wrestling goes, but it hurts wrestling as a whole then as well, because I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, wrestling's a show. We all know that, and for the most part, you might be pulling some punches, you might be pulling some kicks here and there. Yeah, we get that. It's a show. But when you get hit down on that mat, it's the real deal.
Oh, yeah.
When you get hit with when you're getting hit with a foreign object, it's the real deal. You know, there are risks in. You know, some people wouldn't consider it a sport, but I mean, it is too. It's sport entertainment. We'll just go with that. But I think it hurts wrestling as a whole then too, because you have people that are just really against that product and just think it's so phony. But it's in the end, it's entertaining for the most part. But yeah, how are you supposed to protect? That's supposed to be this beast as far as wrestling goes when he's going into a fight and just getting his ass kicked left and right at that point.
Yeah, and his fight, if he does fight DC, I don't know if you know much about Daniel Cormier, but I picked Daniel Cormier in that. I know quite a bit about MMA, and that would be a bad night for Brock. DC is a lot smaller. Brock probably walks around at like 290. DC's probably like 240, 250, but Daniel Cormier is an Olympic-level wrestler, just as good at wrestling, if not better, and he can knock your ass out at heavyweight. And Brock thinks he would just be able to dominate DC, and I don't see it going that well for him.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what can happen. I mean, when you think back to it, Brock did NCAA wrestling,
NCAA champion.
And there was
306-5.
Really?
Or 106-5. I believe his national record was 106 wins and 5 losses.
That's crazy. I never knew what the record was. Actually, that's mind blowing.
Oh, that's insane.
If you go back a little bit towards the late era of the Attitude Era, there was a guy that was brought in who you can still see now, Shelton Benjamin.
Great talent.
Now, you could obviously already see the size comparison between Brock Lesnar and Shelton Benjamin. Benjamin's a big dude, but Brock is bigger.
Oh, yeah.
But the first thing I learned about Shelton Benjamin, the night he showed up, he was the first man to pin Brock Lesnar successfully in NCAA wrestling. So it just goes to show, it just goes to show you that anything could happen.
Oh, yeah.
So you never know.
Definitely. And, of course, we're talking MMA here. MMA, in my opinion, Brock should just stick with wrestling. Because, like you say, it's such a risk at MMA. You go into MMA, those guys are trying to hurt you. They're trying to brain damage you. They're trying to rip your arm off. And wrestling, like you said, I remember as a kid, I used to convince myself and try to convince others that it was real wrestling. But it's like 50, it's 70% fake, 30% real, we'll say. They really are falling off that top turnbuckle and smacking those mats, When they really do go through tables, they do fall off the stage, it's surely, like you said, they're not full-blown punching you in the face, and they're not full-blown taking a sledgehammer and smashing your face in with it. That would kill you. But it's entertainment, The idea of somebody falling off a ladder and going through a table, to the average person, they look at it and go, oh, that's scripted. That's a lot of practice, time, and effort that goes to not screwing that up so you don't seriously hurt yourself.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you don't just go into a ring and mindlessly face your opponent and just do whatever you want. There's an art and there's a process to the whole entire thing. And not for nothing, I mean, I've always wondered what was actually underneath a wrestling mat. And once you realize that all that is wooden planks just lined up, it's like the idea of taking a flat bump on a wrestling mat becomes less enticing.
It's a lot harder than you would think. A lot harder.
Right. I've listened to count stories of people and their upbringing in wrestling and when they first started training and how they felt like their body was just broken after the first week of training, basically. It just goes to show you a lot of work, athleticism, and effort go into the entire product. So for those that say it's fake, try to show a little bit of consideration because they're putting a lot on the line with this show.
Oh, yeah. And before we get into our last topic about Roman Reigns, have you?
Sure.
I'm sure you go to shows and stuff too, right?
Lately I've been trying to make a bit more of an effort. I've been trying to go to some indie shows wherever I can. I went to last year's SummerSlam at the Barclays Center. That was awesome. So yeah, I guess lately, over the past couple of years, I've been making more of an effort.
What's the biggest name wrestler that you've met or got an autograph from?
That's a tough one. I think I have two. I have some interesting run-ins with a few guys, to be honest. Well, when I was 10, it was winter of '99, and Big Show had just become WWE first time. Came to my town, got my Polaroid for me. I still have it. So it's me and my brothers in the photo with the Big Show holding the Attitude Era Championship belt. I still have that.
That's
so
crazy.
That was pretty good. Cody Rhodes. I met Cody Rhodes last year. I spoke with him for a little bit. That was pretty cool. I did have a picture with him, but I seem to have lost it, unfortunately. But he was such a great guy. He was so kind, and he taught me the secret to wrestling with thumbtacks, which I really wish I knew during my backyard days. That could have saved me a lot of agony back then.
What is the trick, real quick?
Well, from what he told me, the thumbtacks that you use in a ring aren't exactly made of the same material as real thumbtacks. So, even if they're getting stuck, in your body and stuff like that, it's made to be less painful to a degree. So
yeah.
there's sort of a trade-off there. So I hope no one gets mad at me. I'm sure. You know what it is, dude. It's like
secret.
I'm 29 years old. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not 10 anymore, where I believed like, oh my God, like we all know there's tricks to using a table in wrestling. Yeah. There's shortcuts to all this. We all
Triple H puts his hand over the sledgehammer before he hits you with it.
Right, exactly. Sammy Callahan does it with the baseball bat and Impact Wrestling. There's a whole method to these things. Right. I also met Ron Simmons. That's Farouk.
Ooh.
That was a total surprise. I was hanging around at a Comic-Con one day. I'm just walking around enjoying myself. I turned the corner and oh my God, he's like right in front of me like a wall. The guy was huge. I never realized how big Farouk really was. And I was just like, oh my God, Ron. I still have my photo with him. He signed a pretty considerably large photo of him and John Bradshaw Layfield when they were the APA. So he signed that for me. Photo as well. I have it protected in a plastic cover right now. I still have to frame it, so I still have that. That was pretty cool. He had the old WCW World Championship with him when I ran into him. He's the first African American world champion in wrestling. So
legend.
Absolutely.
I got a couple that comes to mind real quick about autographs. I went to Sparta, Tennessee. I live in Tennessee, and I went to Sparta. And Al Snow was at a little event. I got Al Snow's autograph and a picture, and talked to him for a minute. And I got Head. He had the Head with him.
Yeah.
He signed it, Al Snow Head. And
that's great.
My favorite.
He's jacked now.
Oh yeah, I've seen that lately.
He is ripped. I couldn't believe it.
Favorite Extreme Championship wrestler ever, Sabu, was there too. And I got Sabu's autograph and got to talk with him. And the very last one that comes to mind automatically, I got it right behind me. You'll see it when I upload this. They're right behind me in the shot is X-Pac. I sit down and had a conversation with X-Pac and got an autograph.
That's awesome.
Picture. And the first thing I asked X-Pac was, which group was funner, DX or NWO? And he, without a breath, said DX by far.
Yeah, all right. See, like me growing up without like cable, I didn't get to see NWO in its heyday. So when they were brought to WWE at the time, I got the watered down version of NWO.
But I'm sure you've went back and looked stuff up though, right?
Oh yeah, every now and then. You know what it was? I had Mick Foley's first book, Mankind Have a Nice Day.
Yeah.
And he talks about a match he had with Sting at Bash at the Beach in like 1990, I think it was 92 or 93. I went back and watched some of that stuff. At that, you had also in that pay-per-view, was it Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Rick Rude, I think, for the title that night as well. Yeah, it was quite a sight to see how many people were really into the WCW product of that time.
Yeah, I remember when I was about 13 too. My mom and dad took me to a WWE event in Knoxville, I believe it was, or maybe Nashville, and I seen Eddie Guerrero 2 years before he passed away.
Oh man,
I got to see Booker T do a spin-a-rooney in the middle of the ring.
that's awesome.
And my dad, I was just a little kid at the time, so my dad left our seats. We were pretty close, but he left our seats and got right up to the turnbuckle, or right up to the fence, right where the top turnbuckle is, and got a up-close picture of the Big Show.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And he's so much bigger in person, right?
Yeah, he got up to him, and my dad was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first met Show, and bear in mind I was 10, so seeing him climb out of the limo was like looking at Godzilla or something like that. Like, you just look up and up and up till your neck can't go back any further.
He probably had hair back then, right? That's before he was bald.
Yeah, he had the long hair.
He had the
back in the
ponytail.
day. Yeah, that was it.
Back when he used to go by Paul White.
Right, yeah.
They called him Paul White. Yeah, when I seen him, he was bald. That was when he was beefing with JBL, back when JBL was the SmackDown champion.
Oh, I remember those days. I think that was right around the Ruthless Aggression era.
Oh, yeah. That's my most knowledgeable years are 2000 to 2009. Those were my die-hard years, every day, every pay-per-view, every sporting event. So from about 2000 to 2009, I guess you could say the end of the Attitude and the whole Ruthless Aggression era was the years that I'm, most knowledgeable on. But I have every single Attitude Era DVD. I've watched every single DVD, of it all. But from about 2000 to 2009 is right where I'm the most knowledgeable.
Yeah, you know what? There were a couple of years where I dipped out, a couple of things that had upset me about the product at the time. And so I probably missed around from 2006 to 2009, to be honest. But it's funny, though. It's crazy. In that time where I wasn't watching it, at the time I was still talking to people about wrestling and just having these passionate, diehard conversations. So after those years had passed, I was just kind of like, maybe I should just, sit down and see what's going on. And I remember just sitting down to watch a Raw one night, and La Familia was happening with Edge and Vicky Guerrero and stuff like that. I was just like, that was it. I was sucked right back in. The rise of CM Punk, all that stuff, man. And so I every now and then I'll be talking with my brothers, and they'll be talking about how great, how much the evolution of a match got so good during the Ruthless Aggression era. And I just think to myself, what the hell was I thinking? Tuning out at the time. You know what, though? It's like, at that time, I was a teenager. I was running around, dating girls I probably shouldn't have been dating. And just, you miss out on things, but it's okay, man.
Oh, yeah. I dipped out myself from about 2010 to 2016 or 15 probably. But I got back into it. It's kind of like you said, hard to keep up with it all because there's so many shows, TNA, WWE, NXT. There's just so many wrestling shows out there. But I've only got a few more minutes, so we'll jump right into Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
Are you a Roman Reigns fan?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You talked about it a little bit. The first thing you hear when you think of Roman Reigns, or when you get the debate with somebody who's a Roman hater, is he only does the same moves over and over again. All he does is the spear, the Samoan drop, and the Superman punch. That's all he's got, which is kind of true. In my personal opinion, I loved Roman when he first come in. When he was the Shield and had that bulletproof vest on, or whatever kind of vest it was, he was awesome, kicking ass with Seth and Dean, and I liked it when they split the Shield up. I liked Roman better than Seth or Dean by far back then. But it seems when they pushed him to beat The Undertaker, and even a year or two before that, it seems Vince shoves Roman down our throats, and he really does. The Royal Rumble comes to mind in Philly, I think it was. Roman was scheduled to win and, of course, ended up winning, and nobody wanted him to. And it was just one of those weird and awkward WWE moments where a guy won the Royal Rumble and got booed. I think I'm a Roman fan, but I do not like how much Vince shoves him down our throat.
I think the problem is mainly because what it comes down to is, again, there's so many different products out there, right? So you can watch whatever you want. You don't have to watch WWE, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm going to watch WWE, though. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll always watch WWE, even though I have, criticisms about it. But, I mean, again, I watch New Japan when I can, too. But that's not to say, of course, nothing's perfect with those products either, but they're all great. But, I mean, I think what the real issue is, with Roman, you can watch those Shield promos, right? And you could watch his promos with Dean Ambrose when the Shield first broke up. They were doing the whole angle when Seth Rollins is running with Triple H and the Authority and stuff like that. Something was special there with the writing, where you still believed in what Roman said, where everything sounded genuine. But that's the problem, though. Everything, I think, down the line after that became way too scripted, where Roman's starting to say things that it's just like, this is something this guy would not normally say. And I think that's definitely another big problem that played into it. And it doesn't even just happen to Roman. It happens to a lot of people in the company. So I think if they just got a little less scripted as far as those promo segments go, and you let Roman take on more of his own approach, I'm sure he would be able to deliver something for people to get behind him and believe in him a bit more. And I think it would be enough for people to ignore what he's, I guess, to a degree, with what he's doing in the ring. Because you got to remember something, too, about Roman. Sure, he might do those moves, but Roman is a Samoan. Samoans are that's, it's a main component that he uses in his matches. And it is what it is at this point. I like what he does in the ring. A lot of people made the same argument about John Cena. John Cena's getting shoved down our throats. John Cena does this move, A, B, C, and D. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at the end of the day, when it was finally winding down for John Cena and people realized it, the tables had turned, and people ended up falling in love with John Cena again, and nobody wanted him to go. Yeah. I honestly think we're looking at the same thing here with Roman Reigns. Of course, his time's not coming yet. He's only just getting started. It's been, 3 years, I think, since he's been catapulted into this main picture, basically.
Yeah.
But I think eventually, somewhere down the line, people will come around.
I think you need a babyface or a heel, and everybody will know what we mean by that. You'll hear Roman say all the time, "I'm not a good guy, I'm not a bad guy, I'm just the guy." I think you need to be one or the other. You need to be a good guy or a babyface or a heel, essentially. You got to pick. Shinsuke fits those lines of, I'm not a good guy, I'm not a bad guy, kind of, but he's a good heel. Back when they had The Undertaker as the American Badass when he rode the motorcycle, he's an okay good guy, but he's a better bad guy. A lot of guys are like that, Jeff Hardy comes to mind. Jeff Hardy should be one of those guys who isn't really a good guy or a bad guy. He's just Jeff Hardy. So I think with Roman Reigns, he needs to pick, or not necessarily him, but the company and the whole people behind him. I would personally push him as a bad guy. He gets on people's nerves as it is, pisses people off as it is. He would, in my opinion, I'd push him as a heel way before I'd try to get him likable.
Yeah, the thing is like, with the heel characters, I mean, look at Austin. Austin, during the Attitude Era, he wasn't a bad guy, but he had that attitude to it.
Yeah.
But not only that, though, to give him credit, Austin had control over his storylines, especially when he was feuding with The Rock. They wrote most of that material together, actually. They had a lot of creative freedom to run with back then. But, I mean, look at, you could take Becky. Becky Lynch just had this big heel turn, and she is phenomenal at it. We've seen her do this before in NXT, in developmental. She was superb at it. There's just something about the writing when they write a babyface character you make them say all these weird things that they wouldn't normally say, and you kind of just take all the spunk out of them for some reason. I don't know what it is, but there's no conviction in what you're saying. So at that point, it makes it hard to believe in you. So if you can't believe in the character, then what are you really rooting for in the end?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that too, for sure. I appreciate you coming on so much, man.
Thank you for having me. This was a good time.
Yeah, we definitely need to do a follow-up episode because there's so much in wrestling that we didn't even get to cover. Goldberg, the Hardys. There's so much we could have talked about, and the pay-per-views,
Absolutely.
our favorite pay-per-views, our top 5 wrestlers. I mean,
I'd be looking forward to that for sure. Absolutely.
I will message you, man, and I appreciate you so much for coming on here. And I had a great episode talking wrestling. We definitely need to do another one.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me. I was happy to do it. I'm looking forward to many more.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks. You too, man.
Oh, that was a good episode. That's my very first wrestling one. Normally this is an MMA podcast, but I enjoy wrestling sort of. Depending on what it is. I'll fast forward. I'll buy a DVD, fast forward to the main event, co-main event, and sometime later skim through. I like the big matches. I like the old wrestlers. I like it when they promote it like it was when I was a kid, old school style. I like that aggression era like we talked about. From 2000 to 2009 was the best time ever to be a WWE fan, in my opinion. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this wrestling podcast episode. This is Hank here with Smoke Break Podcast. Be careful.